Liza Lawrence here with episode 16, Magical Moments. Welcome to Wonders and Miracles podcast, where we celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm your host, Liza Lawrence, a wife, mother, teacher, and miracle lover. If you're new to this podcast, here's what we do here. Each week, on Miracle Monday, we celebrate awe-inspiring true stories from regular people like you and me. People who have experienced something surprising and wonderful that could be considered the work of a divine source. My desire is to help us recognize God's hand and His love in our lives, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen. Thanks for listening to the show. Now let's celebrate wonders and miracles together. Psalms 37, verse 4. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and He shall give thee the desires of thine heart. All right, so today officially kicks off the holiday season, and it's the first week that we will be featuring some Christmas miracles. So the first guest will share a perfect example of being a recipient of the spirit of Christmas. We'll also hear a story of a girl's heart desire being fulfilled by the Lord. I just love these touching stories of love, and I'm excited to share them with you today. But first, I want to give a shout out to my reviewer of the week. So this review was on iTunes from Angela. It's a 5-star rating, and she says, uplifting and rejuvenating. I love this podcast. I've been listening for about a month, and it's given me strength and hope in my life. I love being reminded that all miracles, small and big, are important and prevalent in our lives. We just have to notice them and be grateful for the Lord in our lives. Thank you to all who share their miracles with me. So thanks, Angela, for that, and it's an appreciation for all those that have helped share on Wonders and Miracles. So thanks for contributing to the podcast, and thanks for listening. And if you want to have your review read on the podcast, just go write one. Go to iTunes. That's the easiest place to do a rating and a review. Also, I'd like to give a shout out for a giveaway I'm doing. Now, this is a little different than the one I did in November. This one is a contest. So I'm pairing up with Rochelle at Get Charmed by Rochelle to give a darling custom charm bracelet away to one lucky winner for Christmas. This is a $15 value. It's a perfect gift for someone you love or for yourself. So check that out on Instagram at Wonders and Miracles. That's all one word, to see how to enter this contest. And thanks, Rochelle at Get Charmed by Rochelle, for helping me sponsor this giveaway. All right, well, let's get started with the show today. But before we do, spoiler alert for parents, if you've got little ones listening, you might want to preview this one before. The miracles are wonderful, but there are some spoilers in here for Christmas. All right, so for the month of December, I wanted to do some fun Christmas miracles. And my husband remembered, he said, oh, my mother has an amazing Christmas miracle story. And so I asked my mother-in-law, and this story happened about 40 years ago. And this is a fun Christmas miracle that happened in their family. So Joanne, thanks for sharing your story with us.
Absolutely. Going back in time. So we moved from Salt Lake City. After being on the police force, John had had enough, and he just said, I want to go back home to Heber City and raise the kids in my hometown, which was about 55 miles east of Salt Lake. I'm done with police work, and we're going to go back home to Heber. So we did. We found a home up there, and we moved back to Heber City, Utah in 1977. That was a good year because we had a little bit of money left over from our home sale. And so we had a good first year, but probably 7 or 8 months into the next year, 1978, everything fell out. The business that we were going to start, the drapery / carpet / linoleum floor coverings in Heber City, Utah, was going under quick. And we were having all kinds of financial problems. We were in debt a lot. We'd gone in and bought huge, great big rolls of carpet to sell. And anyway, it didn't sell. So the business flopped and we were really struggling. John was doing what he could do for odd jobs here and there with his brother-in-law, and we were doing this and that and the other, and we're just struggling. And it was really close to Christmas. I mean, so close that we were thinking, okay, John and I had the big talk one night saying, okay, this is the year that we're going to have to let the kids know there is no such thing as Santa. We don't want them to be disappointed. We hadn't told our family that we were in real trouble to the point of not having anything for Christmas. At the time, we had 4 children, and Scott, Shane, Sheila, and Sheldon. Scott had just turned 8 when we moved up to Heber, and Shane 6, Sheila 4. The kids were small. Sheldon was 3 when we moved there. We just decided that it was time to tell them that there was no Santa. And on this particular day, it was like a day or 2 before Christmas Eve. I had put Sheldon down for his afternoon nap, and I was laying on the couch feeling sorry for myself and the kids and bawling and praying and bawling and praying, and then doing a lot more bawling than I was praying. I was at my wit's end. My eyes were all red and swollen. I looked a holy fright, just praying that Sheldon would sleep a little bit longer. And I was just distraught with this thing confronting me of how are you going to tell your 4 kids there's no Santa? Because that close to Christmas, we had nothing. I was just exhausted and I was so exasperated. And I remember just thinking all was lost, and I was crying, literally trying to cry myself to sleep. And all of a sudden a knock came at the door. And this knock was loud and very firm, kind of scary actually. And I was like, uh-oh. And I thought, I can't go to the door. My eyes are swollen. I look terrible. What am I going to do? I'm bawling. My nose is red. Oh, it was terrible. So I go over to the window and I peek out the drapery. And it's the UPS guy. And I'm thinking, oh, okay. But he's got this enormous box, a refrigerator box. And I'm looking at him thinking, what? So I go and I answer the door. Hi. And he goes, are you Mrs. Lawrence? And I said, I am. And he goes, well, if this is the house of John and Joanne Lawrence, he said, this is for you guys. And I went, are you sure? And he said, oh, yeah. And he looked at the thing and he said, yeah, Mr. and Mrs. John Lawrence. And I was like, okay, yep, that's us. And I said, well, but who sent it? Where did this come from? And he kind of looked at the thing and he said, well, it looks to me like it came from Santa. And I said, Santa? And he said, yep, that's what it says. When it had the thing up in the corner in red magic marker, from Santa Claus, North Pole. I remember that. And I was like, okay. And I'm thinking, wait, is there a Santa? And so I was totally blown away by that, but he helped me in with it and he sat in there and I'm like, what am I going to do with this? And so I called John at work and I said, so you need to come home because we have a thing and I don't know what to do with it and Sheldon's asleep. So can you come home like right now? And he's like, yeah, what do you mean? And I said, well, just come home and I'll tell you. So he came home. And he just looked at it, and we managed to get it through the kitchen and out into the garage area. Well, that night when the kids were fast asleep, we didn't mention it or anything, although I have to say I was like a kid. I was wondering what came from Santa, and we went out and opened it and went through it, and it was packed full of individual gifts. Games, toys, books, clothes, a pair of pajamas for each of the kids. Just this and that and the other, and everything was filled to the brim with all these gifts, including gifts for Mom and Dad. And they didn't say Mom and Dad. It said Joanne and John. And so that was even so cute. Another thing they had with all the gifts, they had Christmas stockings for all of us, Mom and Dad included. They had all kinds of Christmas candy and gum, nuts, and just all kinds of stuff. And that was just the frosting on the cake because, how did Santa know all of our names? and everything. And it was just so cute. The kids were just thrilled. And that was just pretty cool about how they even paid so much attention to the little details. And it was one of the funnest Christmases because it was just such a surprise. I mean, so when we put all the gifts out under the tree, we set them, and so they were all wrapped, and it was name tags were on them, and it wasn't my writing, it was Santa Claus's and everything, and the kids were just ecstatic. And it was just a most memorable Christmas. To this day, I think about it, especially at Christmas time. It's special because number one, it was just full of love and generosity from people who truly, truly did love us and who cared. We did find out who it was from. There wasn't anything inside on the UPS sticker there was where it was from. And it was from John's oldest brother, Joe, and his wife, Ellie, in Casper, Wyoming. Unbeknownst to us, they knew what we were going through, and we thought we'd done such a good job of smiling all the time and, saying all the right things. But they're a very, very special family. Uncle Joe and Aunt Ellie, who, by the way, are both in their 90s right now. So that's amazing. But it was such an expression of true love, and it was a miracle to us because we had nothing. The second part of that miracle is the fact that I took that miracle, and when the time came for Scott to learn that there was no Santa, I took him for a ride, and we got some kind of a treat. We did something together, and I said, "Do you know, Scott, I believe in Santa Claus." And he'd be like, "Really, Mom?" And I'd be, "No, Scott, I do believe in Santa." And then I would tell him. And it was so cool because he could remember all those gifts. We never told the kids at all, except for when it was time for them to know that, Santa was not really a thing. No, they might have known from their friends beforehand. You never know. Probably did, but that was my story, and Sheldon included, that's how we told them. Although I am going to have to tell you, Liza, since you're his wife, you may or may not know this. Sheldon has always had an extremely inquisitive mind. And I remember one day, not that Christmas because he was too small, but several Christmases down the road, I think he was reading in the encyclopedia or reading somewhere, and I was doing the dishes, busy in the kitchen, and he goes, "Mom, what's a myth?" And of course, I just spewed forth this elaborate, very philosophical explanation of what a myth was. And he just looked at me and he said, "Oh, so Santa Claus is a myth." And it was one of those open mouth, insert foot, just as far as it could possibly go moments. Yeah.
I love that story. He's told me that before. He is so smart and he analyzes everything. And so he had been researching if Santa was true or not. And he had read that Santa was a myth, but he didn't know what the word myth meant. So you explained it well. I love that. Well, I love that Christmas miracle story. Such a beautiful story of love and that Christmas spirit of generosity and helping those in need and making your Christmas magical. It's so fun because adults don't get that surprise of Christmas very often, and you got that. How did that feel to get that magical spirit again?
Well, let's just say this. It's been a few years since I was surprised at any gift. It was miraculous and just so fun because we had no idea what was in those packages. And they, to this day, are such special people, not just because of that Christmas, but just how they've been their entire lives generous to all.
Well, I love that Christmas miracle, and I just really appreciate you sharing that. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. It's been fun.
Today, I am with Katie from Utah, and I just wanted to add that Katie has spina bifida and is in a wheelchair because she references her wheelchair later on, and I just want you to understand that that's why. And Katie and I have a connection that goes way back. I used to babysit her when she was just 8 years old, and we've run into each other here and there through the years. And this is a fun experience for me to interview with her miracle story. And this happened 5 years ago. And Katie, thanks for being on the show, and tell us your story.
Thank you for having me today. My story happened February 8th of 2013. I was going through the LDS temple that day, and before I had done this, I had known that your mom was working at the temple, and my mom had seen her there one evening and told me that, oh, Michelle's working at the temple. And I had not seen your mom for many years. She used to be my teacher when I was in like first grade, and I hadn't seen her for many years. And it was very interesting because the day that I was going through the temple, I thought, I really wish I could see Michelle today while I'm at the temple.
And explain a little more. So the temple's kind of a special place for people in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to go through the temple for the first time.
Yes, very special and very unique opportunity. And it was just really funny because I knew that your mom was working there. Mm-hmm. And as I was walking into the temple that night, I thought, I really wish I could see Michelle tonight. And I hadn't been in contact with her for a good 15 years.
Right. It'd been a long time.
It had been a really long time because they had moved away. But for some reason that night, I was like, I really just wish I could see her. So I walked into the temple, and super amazing, wonderful evening. And I was sitting in the celestial room with my family, which is the special room that you go in at the end where it symbolizes being in heaven with families for eternity. And I was sitting there, and, you know, my whole family was there, friends were there, and all of these people were there. And my mom looked at me and said, turn around and look who's at the door. And I turned around, and your mom was standing at the door of the room. I was like, oh my gosh. And so I like ran over to her, and at first she didn't recognize who I was. And I said, Mrs. Weaver. All of a sudden she knew who I was, and we both just sat there and just cried.
She didn't know you were there, did she? She wasn't coming up to see you.
No, she had no idea I was supposed to be there. We hadn't talked in years. Oh, yeah, no, she had no idea. It was such an amazing thing just because I wanted it so badly before. Mm-hmm. And then to walk in there and turn around, and she was right there.
Yeah, that's beautiful. It's amazing. And I love that it just shows that the Lord knows your heart and knew that that was something that you were desiring. And here she comes right at that right moment.
Yeah, it was amazing. I've never had an experience quite like that before.
That's beautiful. And that's neat that you were there. You know, the temple symbolizes the Lord's house. It's one of what the LDS Church thinks is the most holy place on the earth. And so to have that little miracle meeting happen in the temple makes it special as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I could have seen her anywhere in town, but it happened there at the temple.
Mm-hmm. And it wasn't her typical shift. It seems like she was subbing for someone, or is that not true?
She was subbing for someone. I actually have an email that she sent to me after this all happened, and I can read it.
Yeah, let's hear that.
It says, I love the way the Lord works with his children. I had been at the temple every day that week. My regular days are Tuesday and Wednesday, but I was subbing for my friend, Kathy, while she was in California with her granddaughter for a new grandbaby. I received that subbing assignment back in December. and this was in
In
February.
February.
Thus, I had been at the temple Thursday and Friday night as well. There are over 1,200 temple workers throughout the week, fulfilling numerous assignments throughout the temple. I received my assignments and went to work. Halfway through the night, things changed. I was being moved all around and back and forth. The supervisor said, "I need you in the celestial room right now." I was a little frustrated because I would now be another hour and my husband Rory would be waiting for me downstairs, not knowing where I was. I walked into the celestial room. It was crowded with many people there. It was a joyful noise. Within minutes, I saw a beautiful young woman in a wheelchair coming towards me. She was beaming from ear to ear. She looked like an angel. I thought she needed me to open the door for her to leave. Then she said, "Mrs. Weaver." And I knew it was Katie Green, my darling little student from Edith Bowen school days. She was a blonde, curly-headed 8-year-old when I had taught her keyboarding and spelling. I went to her baptism, and we even got to have the school gym all to ourselves one day to go dancing. She in her wheelchair whirling around the room to some spirited music. We had become good friends. Many years had passed, and I had not seen or heard from Katie. While we were living in Lincoln, Nebraska, she sent me her high school graduation announcement. 4 years passed. I had not actually seen Katie in 15 years, and now we were there in the celestial room of the temple. We hugged and cried. It truly meant the world to both of us. There are no accidents. I am so grateful I could be with Katie on her very important temple day. Heavenly Father sent me this invitation.
Oh, I love that. That's beautiful. I'm crying over here.
Yeah.
That is sweet. So, how did you feel when this happened? Did it strengthen your belief in the Lord and how he loves you and cares about you? Anything like that?
It really did. I don't know, I can't put into words what it did for me. It was like, wow, he really does know us so well. Throughout my life, I've definitely learned that things don't just happen just to happen. Nothing happens by chance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wayne Dyer talks about, I don't know if you know him, but he talks about how the word coincidence is actually a mathematical term that means to coincide, that means two angles will fit perfectly together.
Mm-hmm.
And we've taken the word coincidence and made it sound like it's an accidental meeting together and a fitting together, but it's no accident. It is a purposeful fitting together. And so the coincidences that happen actually are meant to happen. It's not an accident. So, which I love that idea. Oh, well, Katie, I love that. Thank you for sharing that sweet story. And I was a part of that hearing of the story because I knew you when you were 8 years old as well. And I remember when this happened, she called me and said, "Guess who I just saw?" And I hadn't seen you for years and years. And then we all kind of reconnected. We had lunch together, and it was just so fun to reconnect with you.
Yeah.
A sweet Christmas miracle that I want to add to this episode. And I found this in a book that I've had for years. When I was teaching kindergarten, one of my moms gave it to me as a Christmas present. It's a compilation of all sorts of great Christmas ideas. So this came from At Home for Christmas by Holly Gregory, and her cute son Mason was in my class, and she was just darling, and so was he. So this is a story in that book, and it's by Irene B. Harrell, and it's such a cute Christmas miracle, but different than you might think. And I'm just going to read that. I turned up the fur collar of my coat against a near-freezing wind as I stepped from our warm station wagon into the bare dirt of a front yard on the outskirts of town. Our adult Sunday school class had chosen the address from a Salvation Army list in the evening paper, and my husband and I had driven out to meet the family. The idea was to find out their immediate needs so that we could provide a Merry Christmas for them. And then, more important, to work with them throughout the year to try to make a real difference, a Christian difference in their lives. We had asked God to guide us to the right family, but now it looked as though the house we had chosen was going to be empty. No smoke came from the chimney, and in the front door there was only a hole where a knob and a lock might have been once. But when we knocked, the rag of a curtain at the window moved, and a small face peered out. A minute passed, and then the door was opened by a boy about 8 years old. "Hello," I said. "Is your mother home?" "Mama's not home," he announced gravely. "She's working." "Well, is any grown-up here with you?" He shook his head. "Let's step in for a minute," my husband suggested. "The house will get cold with the door standing open." The boy moved shyly back, and we entered the tiny room. I'll never forget what we saw. There was a bed, sagging to the floor, the mattress oozing stuffing. No sheets, no blankets. A Bible lay beside a small chest of drawers in the corner. The stove used for heat was icy cold. The boy who had let us in now stood protectively between two smaller children, a boy and a girl. Her oversized slacks were held together by a safety pin. All three youngsters were barefoot. And there was a baby. He was lying on what had once been an upholstered chair. He was wearing a remnant of an undershirt and a diaper that hadn't been changed for a long time. I thought of my own warmly dressed children and my baby in her lovely birch crib with its clean white sheets, and I started to cry. I'd never really seen poverty before. That afternoon we went back with blankets, shoes, diapers, food, and clothes. Again, the mother was not there. The next day we finally found the mother at home. Her name was Virginia, and the children, in order of age, were Arthur Lee, Violet, Danny, and the baby, David Ray. Virginia was a tiny woman. She answered our questions quietly and was not offended that we had come to help. What did she need most? A refrigerator so the baby's milk wouldn't sour. The class found a refrigerator, a bed, a crib, several chairs, sheets, and more blankets. On Christmas, there were toys for the children and clothes and food for everyone. The wood stove was replaced by an oil heater that would not go out while the mother was away. The class pledged the money to pay the oil bills for the coming year. The family's immediate physical needs had been relatively easy to satisfy. But what about the Christian difference? Every week or two, my husband and I would go to see Virginia and her family. Sometimes we'd carry hand-me-downs or groceries or books. Sometimes we'd go empty-handed just to visit. But she always gave us the same warm greeting. I remember the pride with which she invited me in to sit down. She hadn't been able to exercise that kind of courtesy before when she had no chairs. Frequently, our 4 older children went along with us on these visits, and occasionally we took the baby. I had to explain to Virginia about our baby. German measles during my pregnancy had left little Marguerite deaf. When I told Virginia that the doctors said nothing could be done about it, I could see that she was deeply affected. On our next visit, she greeted us with shining eyes. "Oh, Mrs. Harrell," she said, "I believe God is going to make your baby hear. Don't you feel it too? Can't she already hear a lot better than she could? I've been praying so hard ever since you told me, and I know she's going to hear." I just smiled at Virginia. She didn't know as much about science as I did. I couldn't expect her to understand that nerve deafness was not curable. Of course, I had prayed for my child, but my prayers had been ones of thankfulness for her, not prayers for healing. I took the doctor's words as final. Marguerite was almost a year old when we first noticed the change in her. For a while, we couldn't believe it ourselves, but at last we became convinced that she really was hearing certain sounds. When we took her back to the hearing clinic for testing, there was no doubt about it. Our daughter, whose nerve deafness had been pronounced complete and incurable, had begun to hear. In 4 short months, her diagnosis had been changed from profoundly deaf to moderately hard of hearing. The doctors were amazed, but Virginia wasn't even surprised. "God did it, Mrs. Harrell. Didn't I ask him for an icebox and a good stove, and didn't he give them to me? There's nothing he can't do if we just ask him." I stared at her, trying to understand faith like this. "Mrs. Harrell," she said, "I'm going to keep on praying for the baby." "Yes," I whispered, "please keep praying. Don't ever stop." It worked, you see, our Christmas project. It even accomplished the Christian difference. Of course, the difference was in our lives, not Virginia's. But then, we had asked God to guide us to the poor, and he generally knows where we are. All right, so thanks for sharing this time with me. I just love Christmas miracle stories, and I just love miracle stories. Stories of love and generosity and God knowing our hearts. It's beautiful to me. One more quick shout out for my giveaway with Get Charmed by Rochelle. Go to my Instagram page. It's at Wonders and Miracles, all one word, and check out how you can enter that contest to receive a free $15 value custom-made charm bracelet. You get to choose 3 charms for this bracelet, and she's got lots to choose from. So it's really a great present. I ordered 3 for my girls, so that's what they're getting for Christmas. Shh, don't tell them. Once again, I hope you consider sharing your miracle stories. I can't wait to hear how God has shown up in your life. And if you'd like to be on the show, please submit a story on wondersandmiracles.com. I've had so much positive feedback from everyone saying, these are so inspiring. They are amazing. So for those who have contributed, you are blessing lives. So thank you very much. If you have a miracle story, please consider sharing it. Couple things, if you love this podcast and you want to help support it and be able to hear more miracle stories, first, share with your friends and family. That is the best way. Help them learn how to subscribe to podcasts, listen to podcasts, and also jump on iTunes, give me a rating and a review. You guys are awesome. Thanks for blessing my life. Psalms 37, verse 4. Delight thyself also in the Lord, and he shall give thee the desires of thine heart. I hope that you can think of a time when you felt God's love in your life and that you had a heart desire answered from the Lord. And as always, remember to notice and celebrate the miracles everywhere, because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen. Merry Christmas.